If you've used Claude Code this week, you've already paid for thousands of tokens that were never read. Here's what just happened. A developer analysis compared two AI coding tools side by side and found something most people had no idea was happening behind the scenes. Claude Code sends 33,000 tokens of pure overhead before it even starts reading your actual prompt. That's like paying for an entire novel just to get a taxi driver's attention before you tell him where to go. OpenCode does the same thing with just 7,000 tokens. This isn't a small difference, it's nearly a 5 times more overhead for the exact same job. The wild part, most developers have no idea this is happening. They think they are paying for their code. They're actually paying for thousands of tokens of invisible preamble that sits in the background doing nothing except padding the bill. This matters because tokens are money. Every 1,000 tokens costs real cash, whether you're on a startup budget or working at a company. Before we go deeper, let's make sure you understand why this matters at all. A token is basically a chunk of text that AI models process. Think of tokens like syllables in spoken language. A short word might be 1 token, a longer one might be 2 or 3, and a complex technical term might be 4 or 5. AI companies charge developers for tokens consumed. The bigger your prompt, the more tokens you use. The longer the AI response, that's more tokens. So far so good, you pay for what you use. But here's the problem nobody talks about. The tools don't just send your code to the AI model. They wrap it in instructions, context, system messages, and all sorts of metadata that the model needs to understand how to behave. That wrapper is where the massive overhead lies. Claude Code appears to wrap your prompts in a gigantic amount of preamble, instructions about how the tool works, what it can do, all the rules it needs to follow. OpenCode does the same thing but more efficiently. For a basic prompt, you might be paying double or triple for that invisible wrapper than you'd pay if you used a simpler tool. So what's actually happening inside Claude Code that burns 33,000 tokens? The tool sends detailed system instructions, basically the entire rulebook for how the AI should behave, what it can do, what it can't do, edge cases it should handle, security rules it needs to follow, and formatting requirements for outputs. It's comprehensive. Then it adds context about the environment, your file structure, your project type, your programming language. Configuration details. It layers in examples of how the tool has solved similar problems before. Each example adds more tokens. Then there's capability documentation. The AI needs to know what functions it can call, what tools are available, what each tool does. This is all valuable context, but it's also enormous. The Claude Code team clearly prioritized thoroughness over efficiency. They wanted the AI to have every possible piece of information so it could give better results. That's not a bad decision from a quality standpoint. More context often means smarter code. But it comes with a cost that users pay in real tokens and real dollars. The question becomes, is that extra context actually making the results better enough to justify the massive overhead? Or is there waste in there that could be trimmed? Let's put this in actual dollars because that's what matters. Claude's IPI pricing as of mid-2026 sits around $3 per million input tokens. So those 33,000 tokens of Claude Code overhead cost you roughly 10 cents per prompt before you even write anything. That doesn't sound catastrophic until you do the math. If you run 50 prompts a day, totally reasonable for a developer actively coding, that's $5 a day just in overhead, $25 a week, over $1,200 a year for invisible preamble that doesn't produce any code. OpenCode with 7,000 tokens of overhead would cost you about 2 cents per prompt. 50 prompts a day is $1 a day, $5 a week, $250 a year. The difference is roughly $1,000 annually for someone using the tool consistently. Now scale that up. A company with 100 developers might be burning $100,000 a year on token overhead alone. That's an engineer's salary. That's a real budget line item. And most companies don't even track it because they don't realize it's happening. They see the monthly bills spike and assume they are just using Claude more. The benchmark that revealed this put Claude Code and OpenCode through the same tests on the same hardware. They gave both tools identical coding challenges and measured token consumption. Claude Code used roughly 40,000 tokens per interaction when you add the prompt overhead and the response. OpenCode used roughly 14,000 tokens for the exact same task. The code quality was comparable, both produced working solutions, both handled edge cases well. The main difference was efficiency in how they communicated with the underlying AI model. This raises questions about other tools too. Visual Studio Code's AI integrations, GitHub Copilot, various other platforms, most of them are probably doing something similar with context wrapping and overhead. The question isn't whether overhead exists, it does everywhere. The question is whether developers know about it and can make informed decisions. Some overhead is necessary and worth paying for because it improves results. But 33,000 unnecessary tokens, that's worth knowing. It's worth comparing before you commit to a tool and pay thousands monthly. Other tools might be worse, some might be better. The point is this analysis proves you need to look under the hood instead of just trusting marketing claims about efficiency. This analysis is forcing the industry to reckon with an uncomfortable truth. Efficiency doesn't sell as well as capability. Claude Code's team prioritized giving the AI every possible piece of information to make better decisions rather than trimming fat to keep costs down. From a certain angle, that's the right call. Developers want working code, not cheap code. But that doesn't mean there's no cost. The cost just gets hidden in the bill. Here's what's likely to happen next. Companies building AI tools will face pressure to optimize their overhead. Some will, some won't. The ones that optimize will have a major competitive advantage because they can offer lower per-prompt costs or better profit margins. The ones that don't will need to justify the extra tokens with noticeably better results. We're also going to see developers start paying attention to token consumption the way they used to obsess over API call efficiency. That's actually healthy. It forces tool builders to be intentional about what context they send and what they cut. The broader implication is that AI tooling is becoming infrastructure, and infrastructure costs need to be visible and justifiable. Hidden overhead that burns thousands a year won't survive intense scrutiny forever. If you use Claude Code or any similar tool, here's how to start tracking what you're actually paying for. First, check if your platform gives you token usage breakdowns. Most do in their dashboard or API logs. Look specifically for the ratio of overhead tokens to content tokens. If you're seeing 30,000 plus overhead tokens per prompt, that's a red flag. Second, test alternatives on the same task and compare. Run the same prompt through Claude Code, OpenCode, and maybe a third tool if you can. Track total tokens consumed end to end. The differences will be shocking. Third, look at prompt efficiency. Sometimes you can reduce your own token usage by being more specific in what you ask for instead of dumping context and hoping the AI figures it out. Write tight prompts and see if the results stay the same with fewer tokens consumed. Fourth, batch requests when possible. Instead of running 50 separate prompts, combine related tasks into larger prompts if the tool supports it. You save overhead for each individual request. Fifth, consider whether you need the full-featured IDE integration or if a simpler API approach might work for your workflow. Sometimes the fancy interface comes with overhead you don't actually need. Finally, track these costs over time. Most developers just glance at their monthly bill and move on. Start keeping a log. See where the token burn is really happening. This Claude Code versus OpenCode comparison is really about one thing. The industry is starting to measure what it's been ignoring. For years, AI tool companies could hide inefficiency because nobody was paying close enough attention. But as these tools become critical infrastructure for billions of lines of code, the cost side starts to matter as much as the capability side. Here's what to watch for next. Expect more competitive pressure on efficiency. Expect better transparency about what's actually happening under the hood. Expect developers to start asking harder questions about whether they are really getting what they are paying for. This specific finding doesn't mean Claude Code is bad or that you should ditch it tomorrow. It means you should make informed decisions. Test the tools yourself. Compare the results and the costs. Choose based on what your workflow actually needs, not just marketing promises. And keep an eye on this space because efficiency is about to become a real differentiator in AI tools. Follow for daily AI news and subscribe to see what breaks in this space next.